Hey everyone, and welcome to episode number 33 of the Nerd Federation podcast, your weekly podcast for some things pro wrestling and video games related. It's July 1st. I am just off of being at the USB Arena for Forbidden Door 3, and boy, do I have a lot to say about things that went down last night. This episode is going to be all pro wrestling related, as like I said, coming off of Forbidden Door 3 in beautiful Belmont, whatever you want to call it, Long Island. So it is crazy that we are 6 months through the year already. I mean, insane that that's the case already. And it is, I think this would be a good time to, once I'm done talking about Forbidden Door, to kind of look back at the last 6 months just a bit, because honestly, guys, I'm shooting from the hip in this episode. I wanted to make sure I recorded this episode ASAP because Forbidden Door is still fresh in my mind. So I might be a little bit all over the place here, so please bear with me with that. But it might be good to kind of quickly look at the past 6 months after I look at what happened last night in Long Island. And I will say, last night was, I thought, a very good pay-per-view. I wouldn't say it was great. I thought that the first two Forbidden Doors were better. Now, this show had great matches. Don't get me wrong. Main event, phenomenal. Bryan Danielson versus Takagi, great. Sleeper match of the night, Orange Cassidy versus Zack Sabre Jr. And another sleeper match that I thought, really, was the ladder match. I thought the ladder match was really done well. Negatives about last night. Forbidden Door needs a break. And I think we're going to get that because they announced last night that this Wrestle Dynasty show now is happening January 5th, 2025 at the Tokyo Dome. The day after Wrestle Kingdom. It's funny because I was wondering why they had put Wrestle Kingdom on a Saturday, because they don't really do that very often. It usually happens during the middle of the week. I've watched it on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, on a Thursday. But if you do this Wrestle Dynasty on a Sunday, it still gives the AEW folks time to get back to the States for Dynamite. Now, in case you missed it, this show is going to have New Japan, AEW, CMLL. Well, I didn't say that right. CMLL, Stardom, and Ring of Honor. I chuckle a little bit at the last one, with that being Ring of Honor, because that brand needs some help. Seriously. Anyway, we're not talking about Ring of Honor this week. Well, maybe we will, looking back at the last 6 months. Going back to Forbidden Door, the lead up, and say what you want, and I've seen this from some people today and yesterday, and I do agree with this, and this has generally been the case with AEW in the past, is that sometimes these pay-per-views don't have great build. Which is funny because it's the same complaints over and over again, and you would think AEW would do something about that. But I digress. Not great build, and the build seemed wonky at times, where some things just didn't make sense and things were thrown together at the last minute. And if you've been watching AEW for long enough, you know when things are thrown together at the last minute. There were 15 matches last night. 15. 15. 15. Basically took you, I don't know. The first match was about 6:45 on 0 hour. By the way, they had Kyle Fletcher, squash Serpentico. I can't even fucking say his name. It doesn't matter. We missed the match because we had no idea that there was like this extra match in 3 minutes. What are we doing here? What's the point? How am I supposed to take Kyle Fletcher seriously as a wrestler if he's getting his head kicked in on AEW shows and then doing squash matches during 0 hours? The guy's talented as fuck. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it. But yet, you put this guy in a bad situation on 0 hour. Anyway, listen, I told you guys I was going to be all over the place in this episode. 15 matches. You could have cut 10 on the main card. You could have cut 3 of those matches from the main card because they came off as TV matches. They really did. Because they didn't really have a lot of build behind them. I'm sorry, I know you have to have MJF on this card because you're doing it from Long Island. But to be perfectly honest with you, that match did not need to be in the card. The Elite match versus the Acclaim and Tanahashi did not need to be on the card. For as good as that Zack Sabre Jr. Orange Cassidy match was, that really didn't need to be on the card. Samoa Joe, Hook, and Shibata versus the Learning Tree folks, that match definitely didn't need to be on the card. Holy shit. You want to take back one of those matches? Because I just named 4 there. I'll give you, let's have MJF and Hechicero. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one back. So that puts you at 7 matches on the main card. And you still had 5 on the pre-show. Maybe cut that down to 3 and you have a 10-match card overall. And listen, folks, I'm not trying to make it sound like I'm complaining, right? Because I saw today on social media and last night, some people were like, oh, I don't want to hear you guys complaining about how long the shows are. It matters that the shows are this long. It really does. And I'm going to make the comparison to WWE here. Time out. I'm going to do that. And this is coming from somebody who says that there shouldn't be comparisons or don't try to emulate WWE. So maybe I'm being a hypocrite right here. But the thing about Triple H, and this happened in an NXT era, the black and gold era, that we learned that less was more. Those matches, those cards were what, 5, maybe 6 matches? And there was banger after banger after banger on those shows. Now, does AEW have banger after banger after banger on pay-per-views? Yes, but it doesn't happen all the time, every single fucking pay-per-view. It's tough to have that sort of consistency all the time. And they're going to be duds. We've seen the duds. That 6-man match with Hook, Joe, and Shibata versus the Learning Tree folks, a lot of people treated that match as a piss break last night, including myself. I was like, I don't care about this at all. So I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to the bathroom. And a lot of people did the same thing. So that tells you right there, I think, what people think of that whole collection of folks. If you were going to have a match on that show, why the fuck didn't you have Jeff Cobb versus Samoa Joe for the TV title? I would have much rather seen that. That would have been a much better use of everybody's time. And maybe you have some outside interference from the Learning Tree that costs Joe the title. Even though I think the rules with that is that you can't have anybody outside like the Continental Classic title. Again, too many matches. And I'm just, again, giving my opinion on it because the crowd was getting restless towards the end. I was sitting there. People around me were getting restless. You can sense it. They wanted that main event to happen at like 10:30. And it doesn't get going to almost 11:30. Now, it was the longest and best match on the card. Absolutely. No doubt. But I think people were there to see that match. And when you prolong how long it takes you to get to that point, people are going to get restless. And they're going to start shitting on matches that maybe they should not have shitted on. The Mercedes Moné and Stephanie Vaquer match was the perfect example. Those people were fucking getting agitated and bored to the point where, you know what? Mercedes Moné is from Boston. Let's start shouting Boston Celtics sucks chants. Celtics suck chants. And let's start doing Red Sox suck chants. And let's start doing Let's Go Yankees chats. And saying fucking "yer." God damn, that "yer" shit is so fucking annoying. I hate that shit with a fucking passion. But they came out a lot during that match because people were getting restless. I don't think necessarily that the crowd was really against Mercedes per se, but they were getting restless and were ready for that fucking show to be over. Because they've been there since 6:30, 6 o'clock, waiting outside in the bad weather. The other part of the problem here with these long shows is that you're rushing to get everything in, all of these matches in, and you have no time for anything to breathe. Britt Baker makes an appearance at the conclusion of the Moné-Vaquer match. She came out to a huge fucking reaction. Blew the roof off that joint, right? And it looks like she's coming down to the ring, and she stops after a couple of steps. Baker should have been in that fucking ring staring down Moné. But because you're rushing everything, we lost that moment. We absolutely lost that fucking moment. We lost that great moment. Don't get me wrong. Great that she came out. She's back. She made a statement. She's going to be on Dynamite on Wednesday. But we were robbed of that moment of her in the ring because you have still 2 more matches to go. And you had fucking 8 matches before that you were trying to get through as quickly as possible. And the same kind of thing happened with Jack Perry winning the TNT title. That was a really good ladder match. That was one of my favorite matches of the night. Perry wins the title, and it's kind of just swept under the rug in some ways. There was no fucking impact. He's standing on the fucking ladder, and then the lights go dark, like your exit stage right, and then they're playing the vignette for the next match. This is what happens when you're rushing through everything. And I really do think you lose impact for each match at the end when you're trying to make statements and trying to let things sink in, and we're trying to remember key moments that are happening during a pay-per-view. This is still an issue that AEW has, and I will fucking die on that hill that these shows do not need to be 4 to 5 fucking hours. Especially when you've got almost an hour going on the 0 hour. Especially when you're doing pay-per-views almost every month. Sometimes less is more. And again, I don't want to make it seem like I'm complaining. I'm not. I'm just trying to give some constructive criticism to a problem I think AEW has right now. And I think there are too many matches on these cards. We're not going to get another pay-per-view until All In. And then you have to turn right back around and have All Out. Again, how many fucking matches are you going to have back-to-back weekends? It's a lot. It really is a lot. Anyway, going on back to the crowd, I saw somebody make a comment about how this wasn't the typical AEW crowd. I think there might be some validity to that, because when my brother and I were online getting into the arena, we saw a lot of people without wrestling shirts. And I was just like, oh, that's interesting. So I'm wondering if there were more casuals there than usual. Maybe they were casual WWE fans or WWE fans, because I saw a fair number of people wearing WWE gear. Seth Rollins shirt, old CM Punk shirt. I saw a John Cena jersey. A guy ahead of me was wearing an old school ECW hat. Quite a few people there without any wrestling memorabilia at all. So maybe there was something to that. And maybe it took away from some of the action in the ring. They were all about that Swerve Ospreay main event, because at the end there, everybody was up on their feet for maybe the last 3 to 4 minutes of that match to see how it was going to end. And those guys put on a show, and I'll get to that in a minute. But maybe this wasn't the typical New York crowd. I don't know. It was weird. And it's not like New York City's not right there, because it is. Elmont to the New York City border is what? Maybe a 5-minute bus car ride? Maybe. And you had a lot of people after the show heading back into the city, because that's what my brother and I did. So I don't know. I can see the argument that some people, the crowd maybe wasn't into it as much as they usually are for AEW shows. But I will say people reacted to the key moments. Danielson and Takagi. Ospreay versus Swerve. They were in awe of Zack Sabre Jr.'s slew of fucking submission maneuvers. So they reacted to some of these things, but maybe they were just fucking tired at the end. I mean, look, again, I hate to harp on it again, but that could be a reason. You're doing 5-6 hour shows, man. It's a lot. The human body is not meant to sit there for that long, or the human mind to pay attention for that long. And when you have a main event like you did last night, people want to get to that main event as quickly as possible. Speaking of which, I'm going to start there. I don't even know. I want to go back and watch that match, and maybe I will at some point, because that match was fucking phenomenal. And it had everything. You knew it was going to have everything, because Ospreay has this association with the Callis family, which comes and goes here and there. I hope that this shit's over with already. Like, he doesn't need to be associated with them anymore. That's it. That's done. So you thought you were going to get the slip on the banana peel ending in some ways. I love using that phrase because it's true. Oh, he slipped on a banana peel and took a fucking stunner. You know what I mean? You almost had that at the end where Callis is trying to give the screwdriver to Ospreay, very similar to what happened with last year with Omega and Ospreay in Toronto, which I was there for. And then you had Prince Nana and throws Callis down, and you still had false finishes in that match at the end in the last 2 or 3 minutes, which were they really, here's the thing about the finish. And sometimes AEW does not have good finishes. Here's the thing about that particular finish. They had you by the balls because they knew that match could go either way. Because that's what everybody was talking about heading into the show. was that this match could go either way, and I would be happy with either result. Personally, I wanted Swerve to win that match because I think he has a long reign in him. And if Hangman is indeed the wild card, ooh, man, that could be your main event in London. And there's theories going around about that makes sense, and maybe I'll get into that when I give my State of the Wrestling address later on. But go back and watch that match, and I don't want to say it was a WWE type of main event, but it kind of was in some ways. I think that Ospreay and Swerve held back, to be quite honest with you. I think it was important for them to tell a story this time around in the ring, and I think they did that, especially towards the end where Ospreay's like, fuck it, I'm going to do the Tiger Driver. And that didn't happen. And again, the hesitation. This is what keeps on almost costing Ospreay. And in this situation, it cost him the title. You hesitate doing the Tiger Driver. And then Swerve does his thing and then wins at the end. Go back and watch that match. The highlights there for Swerve doing the Swerve stomp on Ospreay onto the table. Woof, man. Ospreay had to jump to take it, to be fair. But the visual of that whole thing was just like, woof, man. How do you not hurt your back on that whole thing? So, Ospreay loses. He's got Daniel Garcia Wednesday at Beach Break in Chicago. A lot of good matches, it looks like, for Dynamite on Wednesday. Now the question becomes, who is Swerve going to face? And what do you do with him? What do you do with him in the meantime? What's going to happen with him in the meantime? How do you book Swerve between now and All In? If Hangman is the wild card, and if Hangman wins the Owen tournament, instant fucking heat, instant storyline, we're going to go run it back and have Swerve versus Hangman at AEW's biggest show of the year. Now, going back to the fan theory that I heard some people talking about, which I think makes sense, Hangman gets brought back in by the Elite. He's an elite guy. They help him win the title at All In. Now the Elite has all the titles. The theory, which I think makes sense, because I don't think you're going to have Omega versus Hangman if Hangman wins. I think Omega goes after Okada. I think they were talking about potentially having Bryan Danielson be the guy that beats Hangman for the title and brings it back to AEW. Now, he's recently said that he doesn't want to win the title because he doesn't think that's his place in the company. But why not have the AEW guy come back and take the title for AEW? I don't know. It's a theory. I kind of like it. I think it works. Maybe you have Danielson go out with a bang and he comes on to Dynamite the week after he wins and gives up the belt. Maybe he wins it at Wrestle Dream. If they're even having Wrestle Dream this year, I forget. Sip of water, please. But that could be the way that they go with that. Now, as for the rest of the card, I would say the worst match of the night, I can't even believe I'm fucking about to say this, was Naito versus Moxley. And my God, that match fucking sucked. There's no other way to put it. The match fucking sucked. I think it was pretty clear that Naito was going to win the match coming in because he's in the G1, and you can't have Moxley missing a month of TV for AEW. Naito was going to win. But my God, that match had no fucking heat whatsoever, and it just wasn't your typical New Japan match. And I think that's probably what the issue was. They didn't have a New Japan match. And I feel as though if you're going to have the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship on an AEW really pay-per-view, you have to have a New Japan type of match. There was barely anything to the outside. And even when they were on the outside, Red Shoes was not counting and doing a 20 count. There was no chemistry in the ring whatsoever. It almost felt as though they were going through the motions. And then Naito does the Destino at the end, and it just kind of was like flat. It wasn't your typical... Listen, if you've watched a lot of New Japan matches, their bigger matches, they build up to a crescendo. It's just the way New Japan structures their title matches, especially their title matches. They kind of build up to this crescendo. And then there's a flurry of things happening in like the last 5 to 7 minutes that usually puts these matches over the top. That was not the case here at all. And it was really, really, really disappointing on many levels. And somebody brought it up on Threads asking, is Naito washed up? I don't know. It sure the fuck seemed that way. It sure the fuck seemed like he's washed up, which is crazy. It's crazy to think about that might be the case, but man, and I forget who it was on Threads that said that. And I responded back to him and I told him, I've been thinking about that this whole year. Anytime I've seen him in the ring, even going back to this year's Wrestle Kingdom. He's not the same guy he was even 2 years ago. He's moving slower. That New Japan style fucking brutalizes you. Which is why I don't have a problem with Okada doing what he's doing right now. I don't. Because that man sacrificed his body for years carrying that fucking company. They made Okada carry that fucking company. And they're doing the same to Naito. And Naito seems to be a shell of his former self. And it's showing up in matches. And I don't know if that was the case of what happened this time around with Moxley, but their match between Windy City Riot and Forbidden Door were two completely different things. Where I thought personally, the Windy City Riot match was good. Wasn't great. Wasn't very good. It was good. I thought it was a good match, especially the second half of that match. But this thing was a fucking shit show. It wasn't a good look for New Japan, I don't think, to have such a fucking bomb of a match on an important pay-per-view. Because anybody who is trying to get invested in New Japan after this match, this is your champion? I mean, that's the way I kind of think about it. You figure more people are watching this pay-per-view than any fucking show that New Japan puts on. And this is what you gave them? Ah, man, it's not a good look. It's not a fucking good look. And I don't know what happened with these two. I really don't. I'm just surprised. Again, I'm disappointed because people who know me know I love New Japan. I love watching that stuff. I love Naito. I love Los Ingobernables de Japón. I think I said it right there. Right, Eric? So, and I don't get to see him. I don't get to see that guy wrestle in person much. Once a year when I go to Forbidden Door, that's it. That's the only time I've ever seen him wrestle in person. Once at the Garden too. Like when he wrestled Ibushi for the Intercontinental title. Like you don't get to see him wrestle much, so when he is in a fucking dud of a match, it's just disappointing to see that. Really was. So listen, Naito's got and kind of transitioning a bit into New Japan stuff. Naito's got the title. He's going to be going into the G1 as the champion. And you have to think that whoever wins the G1 is going to win the title. Because I think Naito, I don't think he is, God, and I hate to say this because I have so much respect for him. I don't think he is capable of carrying New Japan anymore because I think his body is just too beat up. And sometimes I think that these guys hold on for even longer over there because it's that fighting spirit, right? The warrior samurai spirit is what drives some of these guys, and they probably stick around longer than they should. Listen, I love Tanahashi. I really do. But he didn't look all that great in that 6-man match last night. 6-man tag, the trios match. Ugh. Disappointed. I was very, very, very disappointed in that title match. So again, rest of the card, great. Like I said, Zack Sabre Jr., Orange Cassidy. OC does not need to win there. Absolutely does not, because that man's gonna be fucking over no matter what. And a lot of people saw again what Zack Sabre Jr. can do. He's going to be in the G1. Does Zack Sabre Jr. win the G1? I feel like his time has come. That guy's been associated with New Japan for a long time. Why not make him the champion? If anybody's going to carry Naito to a great match in that company, it's going to be Zack Sabre Jr. I think the styles there will gel. And I think they've met before. I'm sure that they've met before. Going back to Baker coming out at the end of Mercedes winning that match, everybody's been wondering where the fuck she's been. Boy, let me tell you, physically, and I'm not saying this in any kind of like sexualized way or anything, but she looked in phenomenal fucking shape. She didn't have those abs before, ladies and gentlemen. She didn't. And you've seen her on social media. She's been working her ass off for months to come back. And she looked like $1 million last night. So that is going to be, this is what people have been wanting to see. People have been wanting to see Mercedes Moné versus Britt Baker in the ring. So I'm slamming my desk to emphasize the point. This is the shit that I want to see. I want to see I just knocked my mic arm. I want to see the Britt Baker that we saw during that first run, where she was getting mic time every week and eviscerating everyone. And really just coming out with promo after promo after promo, week after week after week after week. And carried that fucking women's division for a long time. I want to see that Britt Baker. And I think we're going to get that Britt Baker in this feud with Mercedes. Absolutely. So, that's really all I have to say about the pay-per-view. Again, shooting off the cuff from the hip because I wasn't taking notes clearly as I was watching the show, but I was trying to remember as much as I possibly could about the show. And I will say, so we're 6 months into the year, and you're looking at where the pro wrestling landscape is at this point. And I don't know, man. I think we're still like in this golden era as I adjust myself here. By the way, it's nice and cool here in the Mid-Hudson Valley, but as you guys know, I've been having issues with this bruising in my chest that just will not go away. in my sternum. Not sure what the hell I'm going to do about that. But anyway, so I've got to adjust myself as much as I possibly can. But yeah, man, I mean, listen, there is so much out there for everyone that I just don't understand why people waste so much time shitting on everything. And I'm going to keep arguing about that forever. I really am, because again, there's so much for everybody to watch. Just fucking enjoy what you enjoy. That's what I don't understand. Just enjoy what you enjoy, whether it's WWE, whether it's AEW, whether it's TNA, New Japan, MLW, Stardom, Pro Wrestling Noah, the independent scene. Like, pro wrestling again is thriving. We had it really, really good before the pandemic. I don't think people realize that. Really, really fucking good during the pandemic. Then the pandemic came and really fucked up a lot of things. And I would say the past, what are we in, 2024? I would say the past 2 years, we're back to that pro wrestling nirvana that we had going into the pandemic. I really do believe that. Everybody's kind of found their footing again. Maybe not TNA, though I gotta say, so Lance Storm shared a picture on Threads, Instagram, whatever, about they had tapings in Philadelphia at the old ECW Arena over the weekend, and the place looked like it was sold out. Like, there were massive amount of people there, which is great. That is fucking great. That city, for as much as I fucking hate the people who live there, they come out when there is pro wrestling, especially in that arena. So kudos to them. I still don't know about the long-term viability of TNA, but I think people have been writing that story for many, many years. I still have to go back and watch that pay-per-view. That could be my little project coming up this weekend. I'm on vacation this week. So, doing some day trips around the Hudson Valley. I will report back about that next week. But I think we're in a good time. Even CMLL is starting to get more traction. And somebody made the point that I think Jericho is going to be at a show wrestling somebody on Friday, and it's the first time he's back in CMLL in many, many years. Don't forget, that was one of the places where he got his start in pro wrestling. So he's back there, and some people are saying, can Jericho do for CMLL what he did for New Japan when he went over there and got himself involved over there when Kenny Omega was still there? I don't know. But again, man, so many fucking promotions to choose from. And I think something like last night helps, because I looked today and guess who a lot of people are looking to look more into? Stephanie Vacker. She captured the attention of many people last night, which is great. God damn, she is hot. Like, seriously, that woman is beautiful. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. But yeah, it's a good time. We've had a good first 6 months of the year, punctuated by big happenings in the Bloodline storyline on Friday night with Paul Heyman taking that powerbomb through the announce table. And then AEW came out and mostly delivered on Sunday night. I did. And Swerve and Ospreay really elevated their games, and they showed you why they are main event players in pro wrestling. And I don't want to fucking hear, oh, but it's not on WWE, because if it's not WWE, it doesn't fucking count. Shut the fuck up. Like, I'm so sick of that fucking narrative. Just shut the fuck up. WWE doesn't own pro wrestling. It doesn't. So take that little argument, shine it up real nice, and you know where to go with it. So that's going to do it for episode number 33 of the Nerd Federation podcast. This is the first podcast that I'm recording tonight because I am recording episode 1 later for the Two Dummies That Just Watch sports podcast. So more information about that. Our debut episode is a week from today, July 8th. So we're basically recording an episode 0. I love doing these episode 0s. So that's happening tonight. And here's the thing. I don't have a lot of people listening to this podcast. And I have to admit, I'm debating about whether I am going to continue with it. I know they say for the first year, you're talking to yourself mostly. But I have to say, I'm getting tired of talking to myself. I have to say. So if you're over here after listening to the sports podcast, thank you. Because I am going to be doing some cross-promotion stuff with that, with both podcasts. So I definitely appreciate that. But share this particular one. If you are into pro wrestling or into video games, general nerd culture, or know somebody that is, please share the podcast. I would greatly appreciate it. Rate and review it if you can. Leave us 5 stars. I'm taking that from another podcast that I listen to. But anyway, all right, guys, that's going to do it for this week. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to another great 6 months in pro wrestling. I think we're definitely in special times right now, and I think people should just sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Until next week, take care.